Welcome to the Best Kept Secrets podcast, where we share our best kept secrets about life, love, God, and everything in between. Hi guys, welcome to season 4 of the Best Kept Secrets podcast. Every time I start a new season, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this thing for real. And now we're 4 seasons in. We've missed you guys. We've seen all of the messages and everything about coming back. We're back. And we're hoping to not leave anytime soon. But I hope you guys have been well. How has I was going to say Christmas break, but we're in March, so I don't think it counts as a Christmas break anymore. But yeah, I'm happy to have you guys back. If you're watching us on YouTube, hi, you can see us. If you're listening to us on our audio platforms, hi, you can hear us. So welcome. Today we have a very interesting conversation and a guest that you guys have been badgering me to have on here. They are on my case about having her on here. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us everything that she does.
Well, hey, Sharon.
Hi.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Joyce Omondi, Waihiga. Thank you to all of you who've been asking for me to be here. I am a gospel musician. I'm a TV personality, I guess you could say. I also lead a women's ministry community called Epic Women. I am an international development consultant. I am a family girl. I am married to an amazing man, and I'm very family oriented. And I love Jesus.
Period. I told you guys she has many things. You see, if I introduced you, I wouldn't have been able to get every single thing that you do. So I'm glad that you introduced yourself. Thank you for being here. So I love that you said you lead a women's ministry, because our conversation today is actually about godly womanhood and just femininity and what that looks like in today's day and age. So maybe you can start by telling us more about Epic Women, because I don't know if I personally know about it as much.
Sure. So Epic Women, it's really a community, this movement of women that are like-minded in our pursuits about how we want to live our lives as women. So to begin with, EPIC stands for Empowered, Prayerful, Influential, and Christ-like Women. These are the people.
Trying to be like her.
Yes, this is the woman that I want to become, and this is the woman that this entire army is choosing to become. And so it's all about really living life as a modern day woman of faith who's unapologetic about being Christ-like as we're navigating life, as we're navigating culture, as we're navigating our relationships. All of that is through the lens of this woman who should be empowered by the word of God, prayerful, influential in the spaces and environments that she occupies, and ultimately is Christ-like. So that's what we are. So what we do is we have monthly virtual Bible studies on a woman of the Bible. So for the last 2 years, we've covered various women of the Bible, and it's just the most amazing time of learning. We learn from, I like to say, the good girls of the Bible, but also the bad girls of the Bible. And then every quarter we have what we call a physical assembly, an in-person assembly. It's like the gathering of the troops in person. And it's a great time. And we actually have one coming up soon. I'm sure we'll chat a bit about it.
Okay, that's interesting. Everything you've described in the Epic is what I'm trying to be.
Me too.
We're all trying to be her.
Yeah.
So what would you say femininity or womanhood from a godly perspective is? Because I feel like especially recently in the culture, there's been a lot of conversations about femininity, about becoming a divine feminine woman and all of these things. So I feel like I don't necessarily fully agree with everything. Maybe I can share more about what culture says and what social media says, what a feminine woman is supposed to be, what a divine feminine woman. One, I know there's a lot of concentration on not doing anything for the male gaze. So you shouldn't dress for men, you shouldn't do makeup for men, you shouldn't do all of these things for men. So I agree to some extent. Yes, do things for yourself. There's also a lot of emphasis on do what's best for you, just live your truth, and all of these things. I think there's one of the people I think has really spearheaded this divine feminine thing is this babe who does sprinkle. I don't know if you know about sprinkle.
I've heard about sprinkle.
Yeah. And she teaches women how to, not settle for less, not let a man take you for idiot, and all of these things. So I wonder, what does God say about womanhood and femininity?
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess even as we have this conversation, I guess I do it from the lens of I'm also still learning this.
Yeah.
So I don't pose myself to be any sort of expert. But from what I've learned and what I've understood, number one, it really begins from the perspective of faith. So I think already there's a bit of or quite a disconnect really between whatever people are calling divine femininity and godly womanhood.
Yeah.
Because immediately the lens through which you look at that, the value system of those two is going to be absolutely different.
Yeah.
Right? And so really at the end of the day, I think it will boil down to a choice. I don't think you can say you're an epic woman, but then you're also subscribing to whatever the world says is divine femininity. So when I think about godly womanhood, I think about a woman who is Christ focused, Christ centered. That is her perspective on everything. That is the baseline upon which she builds her life, relates with people, carries herself. All of those things are from the lens of who is Christ and how am I aspiring to be like him.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one of the bigger differences, I guess I'd say. That one is very inward looking.
Yeah,
like,
it's very
me, mine.
Yeah.
How you treating me? How you
Yeah.
handling me? Like, nah, I don't take that. Versus what is God saying about this situation and how does God expect me to handle myself? And so that's where the disconnect comes in, because I think godly womanhood, you can be a Christian, but you're not Christ focused or you're not Christ centered. It's different. This is about saying my priority is what God's priority is. And that's, I think, where a lot of things will begin to get different, because if you're then looking at God's priorities, you also have to look at his word and what does he say as far as how we should relate with one another as women, as people, or as a woman to a man, right? I think even with, how the world and our culture sometimes sees this, there's a huge disconnect there. Many times it feels like women, we're trying to compete with men, and I don't know. It feels, first of all, it's too much work.
Honestly, I'm not trying to be any man.
I don't want to be no dude.
I don't want to be a man. Please, it's hard.
And it's taxing. And at the end of the day, I don't know what it accomplishes really. So I think that's the starting point. And that's, for me, is how I've lived my life. That the lens through which I look to things or through things is really from a point of faith. That's the defining thing for me. That's how I am able to handle being in this world with all its pressures, versus saying, okay, even if the world is trying to go this way, Lord, what are you trying to say? And that's where I need to be.
I like every single thing you've said. Especially, I think for me, it got to a point where I needed to ask myself, who is setting the standards of who I want to be as a woman? Is it culture? Is it social media? Is it my friendships? Is it the things that I'm watching on TV? Or is it God? Like, who is setting the standard? And I love what you said about what you guys do at Epic Women, because the previous Bible study group that I was in, we did a challenge where we read about the women in the Bible. So we went deep and we read about literally, the good girls and the bad girls, and everyone. And I think that's when I started to ask myself questions about what kind of woman do I want to be. I don't think I've ever asked myself those sort of questions. I don't think I ever even thought about being feminine or about being a woman. I just existed in life. I was just living life, and I was like, yeah, I happen to be a woman and whatever. Yeah. But I think when we started reading all of these women in the Bible, that's when I started to see aspects of myself in certain women. And because that's what the Bible is supposed to do for you. So I started to see myself in this person and this person. And I started to ask myself, who can I borrow from? What has inspired me from, for example, Esther or Rahab or whoever, and all of these things. So I would highly recommend to anyone who's listening or watching, definitely just read about the women in the Bible. But even as we speak about the Bible, I know there's a lot of conversations about the Bible and Christianity and religion, even outside of Christianity, other religions not being pro-women, and just, Christianity being a patriarchal religion. What do you think about that?
I mean, I would love to hear what some of those examples are. Because for me, actually, at least from these Bible studies that we've done at Epic Women, I actually think the Bible, Jesus was extremely pro-women. Like absolutely pro-women. Some of the studies that we've seen, and so you can look at, say, Rahab, for example, right? She was a prostitute. Right? Yet she's one of, I think, 4 women in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. Like, of all the women that there could have been in the Bible, one of them is a prostitute. Right? That is a tremendous honor, that, because you could say, hey, this is God. He could have done anything and chosen somebody else to be in his heritage. But here is this woman that he chose. You think about the Samaritan woman, who's another study that we did, absolutely blew my mind. And she actually was this woman who was running away, like she was going to fetch water in the middle of the day when it's hottest.
When
nobody goes to the well in the middle of the day. But it's because she was already so embarrassed, and her culture had really shamed her. But yet she goes there. And Jesus, by the way, took, I don't know what route he took that day, but it wasn't the most direct route to wherever he was going. And so really, when you understand that study, it's almost like he was there waiting for her. And he meets her there at this well and has this conversation with her, and her life changes from it. Recently we studied, was it Hagar, who again was the slave of, Abraham and Sarah. And she's being mistreated and she's running away. She's the first woman to ever name God. And she said, he's the God who sees me. I mean, what a powerful, you know what I mean? And she's the first woman to not just name God, but encounter God. And she wasn't even a Christian, you could say. She wasn't even from, the heritage of Abraham and all of that leads us to faith today. So I don't necessarily think so. I don't necessarily agree. I think even Jesus, when he died and rose again, we're about to celebrate Easter. He first revealed himself to women. Those were the first people that saw him. So I don't know. I don't think I would agree. I think maybe the contention is because we want to live our lives based on the standards that we've set for ourselves today. And anything that sort of seems to contradict that, we kind of maybe take it as violence against ourselves. I don't know. But I don't know if I'd necessarily agree. Of course, it was a different culture. So I think there's the Bible and who God says I am, right? But there's also the culture and the context in which those people lived. Were they patriarchal? Absolutely. But I don't think that's a direct line to say that, oh man, God is against women, or he's not as, there's a difference, I think.
Because I think the conversations come from, there's the verse that says women should not teach. There's, just a lot of women who are not highlighted, or the Bible being maybe like 80% men who are mentioned, and all of these like big major people that people know about, like the prophets and the Moseses and all of these guys who are men. So I think a lot of people wonder, where was the space for women? And I think I also used to ask myself that question until I read about the women in the Bible. And I realized that they might not be the majority of the mentions in the Bible, but they are so mighty, and the impact that they had on not only just the Bible, but even the generations was so profound, and it wouldn't have been there without them.
And that's the thing. Maybe that's the disconnect, because I think part of what our culture wants to say today is it's all about this my truth, my power, my say. But one of the things that I have come to learn in my journey of being an epic woman is this thing about the part of internal beauty is having a very calm, gentle spirit, and understanding that I don't need to shout as loud as a man to have influence. I don't need to have the same, measure of strength or aggression or whatever to have influence. One of the most influential people in the Bible actually was a slave girl to this, was he a centurion, who then, he was so sick, remember, and his body was ill. And it was she's the one who told him, go see. If she didn't, she doesn't have a name in the Bible.
She's just known as the slave girl.
She's just known as the slave girl. Yet, so powerful that she actually led, her boss really into having his life changed and redeemed. And so one of the things actually in our last study that we learned is this question about, are you okay with being nameless, with being faceless, if it brings glory to God? Because I think as long as we're trying to compete, God can't share his glory with anybody. So if we're trying to compete and say, I have to be the one who's seen, and I have to be I think that's where we're definitely going to have contention. And so if you look at it from that lens, then sure, you're going to be like, how comes Nani wasn't named? And even this other girl wasn't given a position? And the titles there are no equal rights here, and those are important things within certain contexts. But I think when you're talking about faith, I think there's space for it to be different because the goal is different.
Yeah, that's so good. And just to touch on the competition aspect with men that we were speaking about earlier, what are your thoughts about that? Because we were both saying, I'm not trying to be a man. In fact, I have no desire to even want to know what it's like to be a man.
Right. I'm sure they have their struggles too.
I'm sure it's hard for them, and I know actually I know it's hard to be a man, but I have no desire. I'm very happy to be a woman, and even if I had the choice to come back, I would still choose to be a woman.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts about just the maybe like tug of war that there is today with like the whole gender war thing?
And it's a fair point. And by the way, by saying all of this, it doesn't mean that I don't think women should be any less competitive or excellent, I should say, really, in their spaces. So this isn't, be smart, be educated. Like, I have a master's from Georgetown. Like, I'm not trying to chill or should you play low for somebody. That's not what it's about. And even I think there's specifications of how and where that sort of change of roles, if you will, is supposed to happen. So I think women should absolutely go after things that they desire. Dreams. You should absolutely work hard. You should absolutely desire to be that CEO and that boss babe. But I'm just saying, as I pursue that, from what is my motive and what lens am I looking at doing it through, right? So I don't think women sort of backing down does anybody any favors, really. There's so much that we bring to the table.
So much.
And I think true men, real men, honestly see that and they value that. And then it's no longer about a competition in the spaces that you're working in, especially when it comes to marriage and relationships, because I think that's where a lot of that conversation tends to focus in. If you're truly like trying to build a relationship, it becomes about teamwork. It's not about who's doing better. You're a team. You're working towards the same goal. And the fact is, life happens to all of us. So there may be seasons where, you as a woman might out-earn your man, or he might out-earn you. But that doesn't that's not a license to now like hold and wield power over somebody. So I think looking at it and saying, you know what, we're actually a team and we're working towards a common goal, hopefully should help you diminish some of that competition thing. Now, respect, absolutely important, both ways in that sort of relationship, right? So, I think, again, depending on how you want your relationship to go, respect and understanding, kindness, just the common basic things, really important. And you can refer back to what the Bible actually calls love. And if you measure your relationship that way, are you kind? Are you patient? So I think ultimately, actually, it made me think that I do think, or maybe I should ask you this. Would you say there's a difference between femininity and feminism?
I do agree with feminism to a certain extent. Of course, I don't think that feminism should be radical. I don't think that, we're any better than men. I think one of the things that I learned recently, actually, from someone, from a pastor called Pastor Thande, he says that we are equal in value but different in purpose. So the way God made us, the way God made women and men, we're equal in value. The way he sees us with equal value. He sees us the same. He loves us the same, but we have different purposes.
Absolutely.
So when we try to infringe on each other's purposes, then we are out of alignment with what God wanted us to be and how he created us, right? So if I'm trying to be a man, then I'm not in alignment with God's will for me. And if a man is trying to be me, then he's not in alignment with God's will for him. So that's where there's a conflict, and that's where there's there's the gender wars and all of that. I do think that in certain cultures and places, women are looked down upon.
Sure, absolutely.
I do think that women face challenges that men can't relate to, and vice versa. But
economically,
financially,
academically,
so many where I do agree that there are certain gaps that are meant to be filled, and certain things that are not going the way that they should be going. So me personally, when I decided to stop trying to compete with men or even compete with women, compete with anyone, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna
be a better
tunnel
version of
vision to
yourself.
what I feel like God desires for me to be as a woman. And we've talked about it here on the podcast before, that when you're trying to do things outside of God's will, then you're just wasting your time. You're going around in circles.
It's exhausting.
So it's exhausting, and that's
and
why
a time waster.
And time wasting so much time. And that's why I wanted us to have this conversation, so that we can kind of just like come back to what it is that God says that women should be doing. You mentioned relationships, and that's also another very heated argument about submission. And I think there are women who feel like, why am I submitting to a man? That makes me less than him. And the man is the head and I am the neck, or whatever. Like, there's all of that. And I personally, at some point, I was just like, I don't know. I don't know about submission, guys. I don't know. So,
is it because of your understanding of submission? Because maybe that's part of it too.
I think my understanding of submission then was how it was presented to me, growing up, and the things that I would hear, the things that I would see, until I started to, do my own research about, okay, what does submission actually mean in the biblical context and all of these things. Now I'm not super opposed to it. Actually, I'm looking forward to submitting, just not to a man that's.
You need to submit to the right man.
The right man.
That's the
thing. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the whole submission?
I mean, I think growing up, every modern babe, like, you hear the word submission and you're just like, yawn.
Make it stop.
What is this? Like, I'm so over this conversation. But I think as we mature and as we take aside, someone once told me, like, the things about God is not really about emotion. It's not about feelings. It's not about how you feel. But God, I don't feel like submitting.
Yeah, like
it's not about that. It's not about your feelings. It's about saying, God, what is your word saying, and how do I honor you? By what your word is saying. So again, I think the whole idea of submission, honestly, I think in many ways has also been really misused, really misrepresented. I think there are people who do certain things and then call it submission, or men who sort of use that term almost manipulatively against women and then say it's submission. I don't agree with that, because even when you read the Bible, it's said very often that even before it talks about women submitting to their husbands, it talks about submitting to one another, right? So it's an expectation on both both ends, right? And the way that the woman submits, when you read that section for men, like I feel like kazi kwa the guys, because
there's a lot more work
loving
for you.
your wife like Christ loved the church. That is a tall order. But I think submission, honestly, comes easy when you're submitted to the right person. And that's why, again, for me, I look at everything through the lens of faith, because I want to understand this person that I'm dating or this person that I'm seeing, who are they submitted to? Who is their authority?
Yeah.
Because when things get thick between us, like, can I trust that his value system, the lens at which he looks and gauges himself, is one that I can agree with? Because if his standard is just his boys down the road who, are running around across town, like, you're not going to be on the same page, right? So again, I think that comes from, for me at least, the perspective of faith, and really trying to ask myself, number one, am I dating well? This person that I'm investing so much time in, do I really know what their priorities, like, where does God stand in their life beyond them just saying they believe in God and they they go to church and they like Jesus?
It's their relationship.
It's their relationship. What does is that relationship transforming their lives? Are they progressively becoming more and more like Christ? Both of us need to be on a journey. That triangle people point at, like, there's him and then there's you and then God is at the top. The further you are individually from God, the further you are from each other even. So as you both are working towards God, you're also getting closer together. And I think that's what makes the most beautiful relationships. And then submission, really, I think it's a privilege for me to be led. I want a strong man. I have no qualms with that. I want a strong person. I need to be able to trust you with my life. Because when I get into this thing, it's for until death do us part. Like, I'm not trying to have an exit clause. So I need to be able to trust that you are someone who can be reliable and dependable. And that as I give of myself, my body, my will to you, because that's submission, that I can trust where you're leading us.
Yeah. Completely agree. I don't even think I have anything else to add on to that, other than I just want women to stop looking at themselves as weak.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think that we are weak in any way.
Not at all.
Once you start to understand the power that you hold as a woman and what your femininity can do for you, then you start to look at things differently. Because I do think, one, God wasn't satisfied until Eve was made, right? He saw Adam's need, and he was just like, actually, he's not okay on his own.
He needs a helper.
Yeah. And I have no problem being a helper, because I feel like women, you give them, what is it called? You give them like dough and they make a cake out of it.
Absolutely.
And
that's the power
of being a woman. And I think that men who are smart can identify that in the wives that they have, or the girlfriends that they have, where they can entrust them with things and they know that they have the ability to help them. I think smart men listen to their wives when they tell them, actually, that deal, I don't think it's a good deal for you, or actually that place, I don't think it's the right move to make or the right thing to do. And I think when you're aware of your role as a wife or as a partner or whatever, then it just makes things a lot better, because you stop trying to be your man and you let him be him and you be you.
I love what you've brought up, because then it reminds me that, beauty is important. How I look is important. And that's why I ascribe to femininity as far as being a woman, presenting myself well as a woman, smelling good as a woman, all of those things. All of those things do not take away from me being a godly woman. How I present myself matters, right? And that's a whole other conversation. But I love what you said, that, you know, even as a woman, part of my power is to look at my husband and say, you know what, babe, I don't think this is the right deal. Actually, let's check this out. And that's why, as a woman, we are so much more than how we look like. This is the thing that irks me the most about about womanhood sometimes in Nairobi, because in a sense we've almost reduced ourselves
to our looks,
to our hemlines, how long our lashes are, to how much cleavage we show. And you have so much more to give,
to offer.
Like, your brain is so powerful. It makes me think of that Proverbs 31 woman. I know there are people who get salty about it.
Like, you have Proverbs 31, you're like, no.
But if you think about what that woman was doing, she was like a business person. Like, she knew how to get up and source for her family. She knew how to take care of her household. One of my favorite Bible characters, I mean, I gush about her all the time. She was our first character this year. She's called Abigail. Like, I'm basically like converting people into Abigail. Like, when we get to heaven, me and Abigail are hanging out. Like, we're having coffee dates. Oh my God, I love that woman. She was married to this crazy guy. The Bible even calls him a fool.
Foolish man.
His name is Nabal. But her wisdom and how she handled things, very gentle personality. But she saved not only her foolish husband's life, but even the entire household. And the Bible talks about, even for King David, that he noticed, beyond her beauty, he also noticed her wisdom and her intelligence, and that by her actions, she kept him from stepping out of his purpose with God and sinning against God. That is so profound, that as a woman, you can actually hold someone's future in your tongue, in your actions, in your love, in how you carry yourself. Like, you have the power to change someone's life. Women, we're nurturers. That's not something to ever desire to lose. God did not wire men as nurturers, right? So there's a place for us.
There is.
And it's a profound place, and we shouldn't be trying to lose it. We should embrace it.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think are some of the habits we can take on to just help us become more godly women and embrace our femininity more?
Yeah. I think the first thing is to really work on your personal relationship with God. And I mean relationship. It's where I'm at. Like, that's what I'm really trying to do. That, do I have communion with this, with God? Like, do I know his heart? Does he know my heart? We need to be so wrapped up in him, because he ultimately is the source of, either the world tells you who you are, or you go to the Bible and the Bible will tell you who you are. Or your circumstances will define who you are. And then you become like, life sometimes can make us very hard. And it's because you've been through hell and back, right? But at the same time, you can also look to the word and look to God for healing. So for me, building that personal relationship with God is I see it more and more now, that how important that is. And it needs to be more than religion. It needs to be
more than going to church on Sunday.
More than going to church on Sunday. More than having a couple Christian friends here and there. More than knowing John 3:16. Right? Even though that's a good Bible verse to know. It's really, is my walk with God changing my life? Is it transforming who I am as a person? I think that's a very important step. But secondly, as a woman, invest in yourself, girlfriend. Like, go to school, work on yourself. Like, take care of your body, love yourself, like, work on yourself. If you need to get your finances in order, we've been talking about girl math for a hot minute.
Girl math, like, girls, we need to
like,
get it together.
Get it together, right? Like, So people can't be asking us, what do we bring to the table? My friend, like, do you have time? Let's whip out books and start like scrolling through it, because you know that there's a lot that you bring to the table. So that's the other thing I would say. Really invest in yourself. Take care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with makeup, okay? Just because you like a natural look and someone else likes a bold look, it's fine. Just do what works for you. But I think it's important to present yourself well, to speak well, to work on your attitude, to just there's something to me so powerful about that calm, gentle spirit. Yeah. Even God talks in it's a still small voice. People are there waiting for earthquakes and firestorms, and he came in a still small voice. Even you as a lady, there's a way that, let your presence be felt, and it's through gentleness and kindness. What else can we work on? I think part of that self-care is how we speak to ourselves too. I know that's a struggle for so many of us. Sometimes our brains and our minds can just tell us the most horrible things about ourselves. And I think part of that self-care and that self-love is really speaking well to ourselves and reminding ourselves of who God has said we are, because we may not always feel like those people. At least for me, I know I don't all the time, and that's where I need to go back to the word and I hear what God says about me, and that really helps me out. And then I think the other thing is also about building community of like-minded people. It's so tough to live in this world nowadays where, if you don't have the same value system, at some point you're just going to end up clashing. Because how do you sustain that relationship? Like, where do you say you're moving to? Already your goals, your points of convergence are going to be so different. And for me, doing Epic Women has really been a strong part of that. Honestly, it's part of how it started. Because I remember I was somewhere and this person that I had absolutely admired from a distance, and I finally got the chance to meet them. I was abroad, and in my conversation with the person, I was like, huh?
The math is not mathing.
It's not mathing at all. I was like, are you serious? And I'm like, if this is me and I feel like I can't even look up to this person that I've been admiring for so long, what happens to the people who are looking up to me? Like, do they have other examples of people that they can look up to? And that's really partly how Epic Women was born. And so I think establishing and finding community of like-minded people is so key. And that's, I think, one of the greatest blessings of Epic Women. And like I mentioned, we have quarterly assemblies. And so on the 23rd of March, actually, at Nairobi Cinema from 2 p.m., we gather for a fun afternoon of fellowship, of dance, of praise, of teaching, learning, prayer, networking. You get to meet other women. Part of what I have really treasured from Epic is some people have met and become best of friends from these meetings. So nice. We've had young women who've come and attended an assembly before, and then the next time they've brought their moms, or mothers who came before and then now came with their daughters. So I think just building that community and to see it across all ages has been such a profound thing for me. Even for me, I'm very, like, I really do enjoy my space, but I think the more I find a community that I can relate with, the more I feel empowered about my way of thinking, right? So that I'm not an island by myself. It toughens me up. It backs me up. I feel like there's a place I can run back to and be like, guy, I was talking to these people and imagine they were, rather than living as an island with my own value system. And so I'd say find community. And I'd want to encourage anybody who's watching who is seeking such a godly woman community. You're most welcome to Epic Women.
Go.
Just register www.joyceomondi.com/Epic Women. We'd be so happy to have you and welcome you home.
Yay. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think everyone needs to definitely go there and meet like-minded women, like you're saying. For me, I think I would say the things or action points or habits that we can take up to be more godly women is, aside from the wearing pink and wearing dresses, and because I think that's what we're being told by culture to do, to be more feminine.
No, me, I hate pink first.
Yeah, but they're like, yeah, just wear like cute girly dresses and wear pink and wear all of these things. I think it's beyond what we wear. I mean, definitely, like we were saying, the way you present yourself does matter. But it's beyond that. It's your habits. It's an internal thing,
not an outward
yes. So
job.
It's what you're saying. It's the way you speak to yourself. It's going to therapy, working on your issues. It's going to school. It's getting your bag. It's working hard,
doing proper math.
Doing proper math. It's the not dating people who are bad for you. It's the little habits. It's the not taking care of your hygiene, taking care of certain things that sometimes we don't even really think of. It's the way you present yourself. It's the way you speak to other people. But I think for me, the biggest thing has been the way I treat other people. That's what has been life-changing for me, because I was just like, if I'm a representation of God and what it is to be a godly woman, I can't be speaking to people anyhow. I can't be rude to people. I can't be unkind. I can't just like be standoffish and all of these things. And I'm constantly reminding myself to be gracious and graceful in the way that I present myself, in the way that I speak to other people, in the way that I treat other people. But yeah, it's just mostly a habits thing. It's an internal work, and it's a constant work in progress. I don't think you ever get to a point you're like, yeah, so now I'm a perfect woman. It's a constant work in progress, and we're progressing. I think that's, do you have anything? Actually, we, in our first and second season, we used to ask people what they would say their best kept secret is on this conversation that we've had, and we've stopped doing that, and I really want us to go back to doing that in this season. So as we close, what would you say your best kept secret is on being a godly woman and being a feminine woman?
Wow. I feel like I've really touched on it already, but I think I'd say number one is that whole difference between really assessing for yourself, and maybe this is sort of an assignment for everybody. Go and really try and drill down for yourself, what is the difference between femininity and feminism and the extremes, right? And then see how that challenges or influences your understanding of what it means to be a godly woman.
Okay.
So we say you can pray and you can slay, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Period.
Right? Like you can
pray
look
and
good.
slay away.
Yeah, you can look good. You can, as you've said, present yourself well.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's that lens through which you look through life through. And so I think if we're truly honest with ourselves, and if we sit down and assess ourselves and say, what is my actual value system? I think that will help us define a lot of things and hopefully navigate whether we are actually on the path to godly womanhood or are trying to fit into culture with the label of Christian on top.
Oh, yeah. I don't even think I have. Just leave it there. I don't want to add anything on top of that. I think we can close it there. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you for sharing all of your wise words. And please, guys, go check out Epic Women and tell us when you go and how it impacts you, because I know it definitely will. I think that's pretty much it. Please let us know your thoughts in the comment section if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on our audio platforms, thank you for listening. We'll see you, or you'll hear us in the next episode. Bye.
Ciao.